I am 78 years old. I have lived long enough to see how the body changes without asking for permission. It wasn't overnight, but one day I noticed it. I climbed the stairs and found myself out of breath. I walked down the hallway in my house and had to hold onto the walls. My legs, which had carried me everywhere for decades, now hesitated, trembled, refused to respond with the same firmness as before. At first, I thought it was normal. Age, people said. But deep down, something told me that wasn't the whole story. It wasn't just about getting older, but about how I was aging. I was losing stability, yes, but I was also losing confidence, security, freedom. I started to depend more on the chair, the cane, on others. I felt my world shrinking. A trip to the store became an exhausting mission, and the worst part wasn't the pain in my legs, but the feeling that every day I could do fewer things by myself. Until one day, talking with a friend younger than me, he mentioned something that surprised me. A word I had never associated with old age: creatine. I thought it was a supplement for bodybuilders, something for young people who wanted big muscles. But he said to me, "No, Anthony. There are studies showing that creatine can help you regain strength, balance, and mobility, even at our age." At first I doubted. Me taking that? But something in his voice made me research. I consulted my doctor, read, asked questions, and I decided to try it. 30 days. 1 daily sachet of creatine, water, and a commitment to myself to move, even if it was just a little more each day. I can't say everything changed immediately, but I can say that after 30 days, my legs were different. It's not magic, it's science, and it's also decision, persistence, and something many don't consider: hope to improve, even after 70. So if you've also felt your body no longer responds the same, stay. I'm going to tell you step by step what I did, how I felt, and why now I get up more firmly and walk more confidently. And before continuing, I want to ask you something important. How old are you? And where are you watching this video from? The curious thing about aging is that it doesn't come with a warning. There is no alarm telling you, from today, you will be slower, more fragile. No, it arrives silently. It settles slowly. And when you notice it, it's already been with you for a while. In my case, it was something as simple as getting up from the sofa. One ordinary morning, like many others, I leaned forward, placed my hands on my knees, and pushed. But I didn't get up. I had to try again, this time pushing myself up with my arms. I sat down again, confused. I tried again. And then I understood that my legs no longer responded as before. It didn't hurt, but they weren't there. That was just the beginning. The following days I started noticing small things, almost invisible to others. I climbed stairs one step at a time, holding onto the railing, as if each step was a mountain. I got dressed slower. Things slipped from my hands. And worst of all, when turning, sometimes I lost my balance. Twice I almost staggered near the bathroom. Luckily I didn't fall. But the scare stayed. That body that had always served me well now demanded constant care. Before, I could make the bed in 5 minutes. Now it took me half an hour, and I ended up tired. Before I opened jars without thinking. Now I needed help or a cloth to get a better grip. Every small gesture of daily life became a kind of endurance test, and sometimes I failed. But what hurt me the most wasn't the body, but what I felt inside. Slowness frustrated me. I got angry at myself for things I used to do without thinking. I depended more on others, and that hit my pride. And little by little, I resigned myself. That's it, Anthony. It's what happens. It's age. I repeated that phrase daily. It was an excuse not to look for solutions, a way not to feel guilty for giving up. But deep down, something told me this wasn't the end, that there was something I still didn't know, that my body could still give a little more if I gave it a chance. And that thought, that small spark, was what pushed me to keep looking. What creatine is and why it is important after 60. When I first heard the word creatine, I thought it wasn't for me. I imagined young people at the gym, lifting weights, drinking huge shakes. I didn't see myself in that image. I didn't want big muscles or to run a marathon. I just wanted to walk without fear. Sit down and get up without difficulty. Have balance when turning in a hallway. Recover a bit of that confidence that age was taking from me. But the truth is that creatine is not just for athletes, nor is it a modern trend. It's something our body naturally produces. Since we are born, creatine is there, in our muscles and in our brain, helping cells produce energy quickly, especially when we move, when we use strength, or when we need to react. The problem is that as years go by, our body starts producing less, and at the same time, our muscles lose mass, our joints become less stable, and our energy reserves run out faster. It's like the engine begins to fail just when we need it most. What creatine does, when taken as a supplement, is help that engine run better. It's not a magic pill. It won't make you young again or take 20 years off your age. But it does help the body regain some of that lost energy. In simple terms, it gives more power to your movements, improves strength, increases endurance, and most importantly for many of us, it helps maintain balance, reduces fatigue, and speeds recovery after small efforts like walking, climbing stairs, or just standing. Some studies in older adults showed that those who took creatine for several weeks, along with light physical activity, gained more leg strength, walked faster, and fell less. And I'm not talking about athletes. I'm talking about people over 60, 70, even 80, like you, like me. That made me think, what if it's not about resigning to losing strength, but understanding how to recover it? Creatine, at that moment, stopped seeming distant and started sounding like a tool, a little help to make the body work with more vitality again. But like everything in life, it's not enough to just take something and expect results. You have to accompany it. You have to move. You have to want to change. And that's exactly what I did. The day I decided to try it, and why I doubted so much. The first time I heard serious talk about creatine was in my neighbor Ernesto's kitchen. We were having coffee, like almost every Tuesday. He is 72 years old, 5 less than me, and has always been very active. I was surprised to see him so lively, going up and down the stairs of his house as if he were 50. So I asked him directly, "Ernesto, what are you doing? I see you more agile lately." He laughed, took a sip of coffee and said, "You won't believe it, Anthony, but I started taking creatine." I frowned. "Creatine? You? For what?" And then he told me everything. He told me how at first he also thought it was only for young people, but that his grandson, who studies physical therapy, recommended he read about its benefits for older adults. He told me he consulted his doctor, who approved it, and that in a few weeks he noticed a difference. When I got home, I looked it up on the internet. I read several articles. Some used complicated language. Others made promises that seemed too good to be true. Doubts crept in. Many. What if it harms me? Isn't it dangerous at my age? What if it's one of those supplements that don't work at all? I already had enough with my blood pressure pills, calcium and vitamin D. I didn't want to add something unnecessary. The next day I brought it up with my primary doctor. I asked bluntly, "Doctor, do you think at my age it's worth trying creatine?" He looked at me, smiled calmly, and said, "Anthony, if you don't have kidney problems and use it moderately, it can be very helpful. But don't expect miracles. Take it as a help, not as a solution." I liked his honesty. He didn't sell it as magic, but he didn't dismiss it either. That gave me confidence. So I asked him to recommend a dose and a trustworthy brand. He wrote everything down on a paper, gave me some guidelines and said, "But the most important thing is to move. Walk every day, even if it's just 20 minutes. Combine it with some movement, and then you'll see if it helps." That afternoon, returning home, I made a decision that wasn't easy. I had spent years accepting deterioration, resigning myself to slowness. But this decision was different. It was like signing a small pact with myself. I committed to doing something very simple for 30 days. 1 dose of creatine a day, a glass of water, and at least 30 minutes of gentle exercise. Nothing more, without expecting wonders, without telling anyone. Just as a quiet experiment, a last bet on myself. And that's how the change began. Not with a thunderclap, not with a revelation, but with a little spoonful of white powder in a glass of water, and the firm decision not to keep watching time pass without trying something different. The first week, small changes, big doubts. The first days, nothing spectacular happened. I took the creatine every morning after breakfast with a glass of water. No flavor, no smell, no immediate effect. It was just another part of the routine. I walked inside the house, went up and down the small step at the entrance, made gentle leg movements while watching TV. But my body didn't react with fireworks. The tiredness remained. My knees hurt at the end of the day, and I wondered if I was fooling myself. Doubts arrived quickly. What if this doesn't work? What if it's just a placebo and I'm making a fool of myself? Am I wasting my time? But something began to change, and it wasn't in my legs. It was in my head. Having committed, having a daily intention, I started paying more attention to my body, listening to how I felt when waking up, noticing if it was as hard to stand or if there was a small change. And it was then, exactly on the 4th day, when something curious happened. I got up from the sofa without thinking too much. I didn't push with my arms. I didn't huff. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and stopped abruptly. Was that easier, or am I imagining things? I sat down and tried again, this time with attention. And yes, my legs hurt a little less. It wasn't pain-free, but the discomfort was milder. It was as if something inside the muscles was slowly waking from a long nap. That small detail was enough to ignite something in me. I decided that instead of walking just inside the house, I would go outside to the sidewalk. I started walking 2 blocks at a slow pace, holding the cane in my right hand, but without fear. After 3 days, I was walking 4 blocks. I wasn't fast, not by any means, but I walked more upright, more firmly. With each step, I convinced myself that something was working, even if little by little. The curious thing wasn't only what was happening physically, but what was happening inside. I felt like I had something to do each day again. A reason, a small goal. And that, for someone who had resigned himself to waiting for whatever came, was a huge victory. That first week I didn't run, didn't climb hills, nor stopped getting tired. But something fundamental was activated in me. Hope. And when you have hope, you don't walk the same. The second week was different. I no longer took creatine out of obligation, but with a kind of conscious routine. I prepared it calmly while making coffee. I poured the glass, drank it slowly, and told myself, today you will move too, even if it's a little more than yesterday. That, even a little more, became my mantra. I started doing 3 things every day. Things that didn't require equipment, gyms, or more than a little space and willingness. The first was simply walking, no longer inside the house. I went out to the sidewalk in the morning and afternoon. At first 2 or 3 blocks, then 5. At a slow pace, yes, but steady, without watching the clock. I just walked, with my head held high and my heart calm. The second was the stairs. I had 3 low steps leading to the backyard. I went up and down, one by one, holding the handrail. At first I got tired quickly, but I noticed each day I needed less effort to lift my foot, to keep balance when going down. The third was the simplest, but also the most revealing, lifting one leg while brushing my teeth. It may seem silly, but standing on one leg, even for a few seconds, is a big challenge for the body after a certain age. The first time I barely held 2 seconds without support. After 4 days I reached 6, and by the week's end, I could balance for almost 10 seconds. It seems little, but for me, it was huge. And then something happened that confirmed that something was changing. One night I went to bed as usual. I turned off the hallway light, entered the dark room, and climbed into bed. Before, I always staggered when placing my knee. I felt I could fall if I moved quickly. But that night, without thinking, I climbed with a firmness that surprised me. I stayed still for a few seconds and realized I hadn't staggered. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Security in my body. Not in my mind, nor in my surroundings. In my body. In my legs. And then I thought, I am recovering something I thought was lost. The next morning, while serving myself breakfast, I remembered a moment from the previous week. A situation that could have been serious. I had tripped over the dining room rug. Before, that would have knocked me to the floor. But this time, I managed to quickly support myself on the other leg and corrected my balance. I didn't fall. I didn't hit the table. I just straightened up and kept walking. It was at that moment I understood that what I was doing wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't an illusion. It was real. Stability was coming back. And with it, a part of me that had slowly faded. A part that still wanted to move, hold on, and advance. Third week, my body responds, and so does my mind. The third week was when everything started to make sense. Until then, the changes were small, subtle. But now, the body started to really respond. And with it, the mind too. I noticed it one Tuesday morning. I was walking through the park 4 blocks from home. I always took the full loop along the cement path. But that day, without thinking, my pace was faster. It wasn't running, of course not. But it wasn't the dragging walk I used to do. It was a firm, stable, agile step. I stopped abruptly, realizing I am walking faster. And it doesn't hurt at all. That same afternoon, something made me smile. I bent down to pick up a coin that fell from the dining table. Before, that was a drama. I had to hold onto a chair, go down carefully, cross my fingers so my legs didn't shake. But this time, I went down with more control. And when I got up, I did it all at once, effortlessly. I stayed still, surprised. It was as if something inside me had started working again. That same night, I slept deeply. I woke up rested, without the usual back or leg pains, and something as simple as a good night's sleep made everything else feel easier. I had more energy, more desire to do things. I realized I no longer spent mornings sitting in front of the TV, waiting for the day to move. Now it was me who moved. And that energy began to show on the outside too. One Friday afternoon, my friend Richard stopped by for mate. Seeing me go out to the patio with a confident step, no cane, he frowned and said, "Hey, are you going to the gym or what's happening?" I laughed. I didn't expect it. No one had noticed a positive change in my movement in years. I told him everything. The creatine, the exercises, the daily commitment. And he looked at me surprised, but also with a spark of curiosity. "And does that really work?" "It's not miraculous, Richard, but it gave me back confidence in my body." And that was the most important thing. Because beyond the faster step or being able to turn without staggering, what had changed the most was how I felt about myself. I was no longer just an old man moving with effort. I was someone who had made a decision, who had committed, who had fought resignation. I felt capable again. And that word, capable, weighs a lot when you've spent years feeling the opposite. It's not about looking young. It's about living with dignity, moving with intention, recovering self-respect. And all that began to be born, slowly, in that third week. Fourth week, the results I didn't expect. Reaching the fourth week was like crossing a bridge. At first, everything was trial, doubt, and testing. But now, my body was speaking to me differently. And what it said was clear. Yes, we are improving. One morning, I climbed the stairs at home without thinking. It was only upon reaching the last step that I stopped and looked down. I hadn't held onto the railing. I went up straight, step by step, without losing balance, without that little knee tremble that had accompanied me for years. I had to sit down for a moment, not from tiredness, but from emotion. After that, I started trying other things. I wanted to know how far I could go. In the kitchen, I have a small bucket I use to water plants. I had stopped using it because it was too heavy, but that week, I decided to try. I lifted it with both hands, and I did it effortlessly. It was as if the weight had been halved. Actually, it wasn't the bucket that changed. It was me. My body no longer avoided movement. It no longer feared effort. On the contrary, it seemed to seek it. And along with strength came something that surprised me even more: my posture. For a long time, I walked hunched, almost without noticing. It's something that happens with age. Muscles weaken, the back arches, the neck tilts. But now, walking down the hall, I felt more upright. My shoulders no longer slumped forward. My back, without me forcing it, stayed straighter. And best of all, the pain I had in my lower back, that constant pain that accompanied me at the end of the day, began to disappear. It was as if my body was thanking me for taking care of it. As if every step, every movement, was a way of saying, "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for not letting me fall." And with all that came a feeling I hadn't had in years, a feeling so simple, so powerful, that it moves me to remember it. I felt alive again, not just breathing, not just eating or sleeping, but alive, present, moving, with energy, with purpose, with the certainty that I could still do things by myself. It wasn't about becoming young again. That was no longer necessary. It was about becoming myself again, and that, believe me, is priceless. The perfect combination. Why gentle exercise was the key. There's something I want to make very clear. Creatine doesn't work miracles. It's not enough to take it and expect results as if it were a magic wand. It's not a shortcut. It's a tool. And like every tool, it needs our hands and our decisions. The real change didn't come just from the white powder in the glass of water. It came from what I did after taking it. It came from movement. The body needs to be used to not shut down, especially with age. And although the temptation to stay seated is strong, what our body needs most is not rest, but gentle and constant activity. I didn't do anything extreme. I didn't go to a gym. I didn't buy expensive machines. My routine was simple, and yet it changed my life. I did 3 exercises every day. I'll share them with you in case you want to try. The first was sitting down and standing up from a chair without using my arms. I started with 1 repetition, just 1. I sat down, stood up. At first it was hard. After a week I did 5, then 10. That simple movement strengthened my legs and helped me regain confidence when getting up from the sofa or bed. The second was walking on tiptoes and then on heels down the hallway. I went back and forth very slowly, with one hand near the wall in case I lost balance. This trained not only the muscles, but also coordination. After a week, turning corners or stepping onto a curb in the street no longer scared me. The third was gentle stretches, especially upon waking. I moved my arms above my head, turned my neck, made circles with my ankles. It seems minor, but it taught my body to prepare for the day. And it also helped me connect with my sensations, listen to what my body was telling me. It didn't take more than 20 or 30 minutes a day, but each of those minutes was an investment, a way to remind the body it still can, if I treat it with respect and consistency. And I don't say this only from personal experience. Science confirms it. Numerous studies in older people have shown that the combination of creatine with moderate physical activity produces clear improvements in muscle strength, stability, and mobility. It's not that one works without the other. Together they do much more. Creatine boosts muscle work, but exercise wakes it up and guides it. That's why if you're thinking about trying it, don't obsess over doing big routines. You don't need to run or lift weights. What matters is moving every day, even a little, and doing it with patience, care, and love for your body. Because if there's one thing I've learned on this journey, it's that the body doesn't give up on its own. Many times, it's us who stop supporting it. And with a little help, like creatine, and a little will, like movement, the body starts to respond. And when it responds, life changes. Sometimes I sit in the patio in silence and think, Why didn't anyone tell me this before? I'm not just talking about creatine. I'm talking about everything this process taught me. About how we resign ourselves to losing abilities, not because the body gives up, but because we stop trying. And if I'm honest with you, there's a phrase that hurts to say but is true. If I had known this at 60, I wouldn't have let my body fade so much. At that age, I still felt strong, but was already starting to give in. A little less activity, a little more chair, a little more better not to try too hard. And without realizing it, every small abandonment accumulated. It wasn't age. It was the habit of letting myself be. It was the fear of change. It was the inner voice telling me, it's too late. But today I know that's not true. Today I know the body, even with many years on it, can respond if treated with respect and consistency. In these 30 days, I learned that science is not just for the young. That what is researched in labs can also improve our life after 70. I learned that moving a little every day is not a waste of time. It's a way of saying, I'm still here. And every step, no matter how small, counts. It counts in muscles, in balance, in posture, and above all, in the mind. Because when you feel capable of moving, you feel capable of doing many other things, and that feeling has no age. I also learned to be grateful to science for discovering something so simple yet useful, to my doctor for not laughing at my question, to my neighbor for sharing his story, and above all, to myself for daring to try. It was hard. I was afraid. I doubted. But I tried. And now, sitting here with a firmer body and a calmer soul, I want to tell you something with all my heart. It's not too late to start improving. No matter if you are 60, 70, or 80. No matter if you already feel it's too late. As long as you can breathe, you can try. And sometimes, that attempt changes everything. 30 days. A small decision every morning. A little spoon, a glass of water, and the commitment to move a little. That was all. But the result was much bigger than I expected. I regained stability. I no longer fear tripping in the hallway or losing balance when turning around. I regained speed. I walk more smoothly, with steps that no longer seem to drag. I regained energy. I get up in the mornings with more will, more spirit, more desire to do simple things, like watering plants or going out to buy bread. And perhaps the most important of all, I regained confidence. Confidence in my body. Confidence in myself. And that's why, if you're listening to this, and something inside you feels identified, let me tell you the same thing my neighbor told me that day, in front of his coffee cup. Talk to your doctor. Ask about creatine. Try it. Don't do it for fashion, nor on impulse. Do it responsibly. Consult first. Ask if it's compatible with your health, your medications, your habits. And if you get the green light, give it a try. Not to become young again, but to become active again. You don't have to start with much, just with one decision, to move a little every day and give yourself a chance. Because it's not just about gaining muscle, it's about recovering something that's worth much more. Freedom. The freedom to move without fear, to get up without help, to walk down the street without having to watch every inch of the ground. The freedom to decide what you want to do without your body being a constant obstacle. I thought I had lost that freedom already. I thought it was part of the price of aging. But no, it wasn't the price. It was the consequence of doing nothing. And today, after this little experiment, I can say it with certainty. It's worth trying. And now I want to hear from you. Have you tried creatine or are you thinking about it? Did you relate to this story? Tell me in the comments. Don't keep it to yourself. Maybe what you share is exactly what someone else needs to take that first step. Maybe your story is the spark that lights someone else's will. And together, step by step, we can form a community of people who don't give up, who even after 60, 70, 80, decide to keep walking. Thank you for staying with me until here. See you in the next video.